Hey guys, so this is what if Deku was half white dragon. Now, I might, what is it? I might stutter a little bit in this video, as many because this is all unscripted, but I'm going to try to do as much as I can. Now, let's get into the video. Now, start our video off years before Deku would even be thought of being born, and we will start our story off during the medieval time, where we will see Deku's father. Deku's father would have been a white dragon. And let's go for the abilities and powers of a white dragon real quick. Now, basically, in this canon, or in my idea of a white dragons would have the normal dragon appearance. Very, mystical type dragons. White dragons being the most elegant and most beautiful of all the dragons. Other than the other monstrous type dragons like black ones, red dragons, and a bunch of other ones. Now, what would happen during this time of Deku's father being amongst the medieval period? He would come across the ancestor of Inko, him basically falling in love with her. Basically, during this time, or in this universe, every single dragon, except for the darkest ones, aka the shadow dragons, couldn't transform into human form. Only 1% of the dark dragon or the shadow dragon population could transform into, humanoid creatures. And not even human, just humanoid creatures, as in dragonling type creatures. Now, what would happen is during this time, Asashi would have started to explore other regions of his powers. Basically, him being about a couple hundred years old at this point, about exactly 100 years old. Basically, him falling in love with Inko. As he would live a long life with Inko, about a couple 60 or 50 years, Inko would have died on her deathbed. But since back then, Deku's father didn't perfect his human form, meaning that Deku's father couldn't have children, or his future father couldn't have children with humans at this point in time, since they wouldn't be evolved. Basically, him not being able to have a life with Inko. Basically, ancestor of Inko dying. And when you think ancestor, shouldn't she have kids? No. This is more the first version of Inko that's going to be reincarnated hundreds of years later, and Deku's father would meet up with her. So basically what happened is Deku's father, his human form would be somewhat of, mainly when you think of Sasashi, if you've seen the anime, you think Sasashi kind of looks like Deku when he disguised himself to look a lot more older during the One For All arc. Now basically, the One For All arc, Deku's father just looks like a 30-year-old version, or a 29-year-old version of Deku with white hair and a white beard. Basically kind of a shaved down white beard. Now basically, pretty much Deku's father would have lived amongst humans for hundreds of years later. Him losing faith in most of them over the years, but eventually coming to his senses and trying to help humanity. Eventually, Deku's father would hide into a cave for 1,000 years, hibernating for when the time comes. He would wake up 20 years before quirks would be, invented, or quirks would be brought into the world. He would roam amongst, Earth, seeing all this new technology and everything. Since Deku's father would have gone into hibernation during the steampunk region. Basically, what happened is Deku's father would have seen all this new technology and would have used those 20 years to brush his knowledge on humanity and what happened over the years of him hibernating. Now, what would happen after that? He would live amongst Japan for the next 20 years, eventually going to a store after going from his house. Since in this universe, Asashi, or Deku's father, future father, would have, and let's just say Deku's father's name, Deacon. Basically, Deku's father's name would be Deacon. Basically, him taking that name after his, given name, Deacon. Kind of a semi-change to his name, but basically over the years, he would give himself the name Deacon. Basically, him trying to regain his humanity after all these years of him living in a dragon form and hibernating, having dreams for hundreds of years. After his time living on Earth, learning more about it after all the years of him sleeping, he would come across Inko. After he come from his house, and in this universe, he would get a job, basically a semi job, and well, being a pro hero. Because during this time, it would be about a couple years of Quirks being around. Him basically using his dragon abilities to pretty much register himself as a Quirk user. Basically, him saying he had a life in Canada. In Canada, basically him just saying something like that, trying not to involve the whole entire childhood thing. Basically, what happened as he would pretty much make himself as a identity in this world, he would eventually come across Inko when he would come or to work, basically patrolling Japan. And as he would come across Inko, he would recognize her instantly. Him coming to her, basically him noticing that she had green hair now. Originally she had black hair, but basically him saying that is that really you? Basically her saying, sorry, do I know you? As pretty much Deku would say, or Deku's father Deacon would have said, no. Basically him charming Inko and trying to get a date, as he would be successful and he would start to go on and on about, is reincarnation really possible? Him thinking all this, but basically him eventually realizing that his grandfather told him this. That reincarnation is always possible if a human soul is strong enough. And basically, pretty much what would happen is after these years, Deku's father going back and forth, dating Inko, it would eventually blossom into a full-on fiancé-ship, or a full-on fiancé, and then eventually getting married. And a couple years from that, Deku would be born. Basically, Deku would have been born half dragon. Now let's go for the abilities, because I didn't really go more in depth of the abilities of a dragon, or a white dragon. A white dragon can shapeshift into, or all dragons except for, well, most except for the shadow dragons can transform into human beings, and some of the shadow dragons can only transform into dragonling type creatures, like dragon humanoid creatures. Now, basically, what would happen is the abilities, pretty much, when they're in their human form, they're as strong as pretty much, I guess, Connor's Superboy, basically being pretty strong, Kryptonian type strength, or a kaiju type strength, to be honest. Them having the strength of a kaiju or a dragon underneath their human body. And since the density and the compactment of, well, a giant, like 6-story or like 15-story feet building type dragons, because Deku's father's dragon form would be as big as Godzilla, or as bigger. But basically, pretty much, well, Deku's father, his abilities, or basically most white dragons have magical abilities that can heal people from literally death itself. Them being able to grab souls from the underworld or from, well, any place they're sent to, basically pulling them back into the person's body and resuscitating that person's body, making the body whole again in case it was shot, stabbed, or it was cut in two. Him or White Dragon is basically being able to bring back anybody from the dead, unless they have a really bad soul, or unless they are sent to a very bad part of the afterlife. Basically, them it is a price, because there always has to be a catch when you have the ability to bring people back from the dead. It would take about, well, as many years as that person is alive off of their lifespan. So let's say the person is 30, it would take 30 years off their lifespan. And since dragons in this universe practically live forever in terms of numbers, they don't live forever, but they live enough to outlive Earth itself. So they're virtually immortal. Because let's say a dragon never saves somebody, a white dragon never saves somebody with its magic abilities. They would live as long as a normal dragon would. A normal dragon, or all dragons, would live about like 60 decades, about as long as humanity could possibly run. But since, you know, as we're messing up the Earth right now, I'm pretty sure we're not gonna survive long. But basically what happened is pretty much, well, Deacon would have started to manifest his abilities. Or not manifest his abilities, start to train with them a lot more since he is becoming a pro hero. And this time of his marriage, he would be at UA. Basically, him just doing his normal UA stuff. As he would become the number 4 hero. Basically, the number 5 hero being the number 4, original 4 hero. Basically, all the heroes underneath 4th would be dropped down to 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th. 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th. And basically, what would happen is Deacon would have been very powerful since his dragon abilities, since most all standard white dragons would have, healing powers, and also, flight, super durability, like, normal dragon abilities, because they're huge and giant. And killing a white dragon would be way, like, super difficult, just like a red dragon or a fire dragon. Basically, with white dragons being a lot more durable and, well, having a lot more powers other than just pyrokinesis and other stuff. Basically, them having the ability to pretty much control light itself, kind of like light beams from Eclipso from the TV show Gifted from the X-Men Hulu show. You can see on Hulu. Basically, something like that. Basically, it being able to pretty much white dragons being able to shoot light beams from their hands, mouth, or anything. Basically shooting laser beams powerful enough to literally go right into the deep, or right into the core of Earth. Basically them also being able to absorb light energy and also energy itself, just straight up energy, like energy blast or plasma beams or anything energy like. Basically them also being, super strong, super fast, super durable, and also them having super senses as well. Basically, in their human form, they would be pretty much as strong enough to pretty much crush a whole, well, foundation of a building with just one punch or one stomp. Basically, them being incredibly powerful. Basically, normally dragons in their human form would be about as half as strong as a Kryptonian, about as strong as a Vulture or half Vulture. Basically, full-blooded dragons that are transformed into humans would be as strong as a Kryptonian, or to about a little bit weaker, but as strong as a Kryptonian. Plus, their already existing abilities they would have in their dragon form, they would have in their human form. Meaning that Deku's father could heal people and shoot energy blasts from his hands, plus he could fly. Basically, him having shrink down versions of his dragon wings, being able to come in and out of his back. Basically, as they're, in his back, they basically transform themselves into tattoos. That's pretty cool. And also, it would be a bright light behind his back when his wings pop out. Basically, him being able to fly as fast as a Kryptonian or as fast as Superman. Or as fast as Man-Bat, because he would have wings. But basically, him being able to fly incredibly fast, about as fast as a jet. So basically, during this time, pretty much, I think I explained all the powers. Yeah, okay, so for base abilities in the human form, they would be as strong and as fast as a Kryptonian, and basically being able to take blows very much, but them not being incredibly invulnerable, just them being able to take a hell of a beating. Like basically like 14 Detroit smashes in one place in like 15 minutes at full speed. Like they could take a few hits, but then they'll start coughing up blood and they'll start feeling injuries pretty quickly. But basically what would happen, I think I explained all the powers and abilities in like a more reasonable way, but basically, yeah, so basically I think I explained all the powers, and yeah, I think I explained all the powers. But basically what happened is also Deku's father could shoot lasers out of his mouth, kind of a light blast or breathe light, I guess. And also he has superhuman agility and strength and speed. Basically speed as in he can move as fast as a vampire type speed. basically being able to blur and pretty much rush past trees, grassy plains, and stuff like that. And basically, what happened is Deacon would have married Inko, would have had a life with her, and eventually Deku would be born. As Deku would be born, Deacon would have not known about dragonlings, because he would be told legends of dragons that found love with humans and had children. But those children, eventually, that dragon outlived those children. But in this canon, Inko's quirk would have been a little bit more, I guess, powerful. Inko's quirk would have been straight up telekinesis, not little, taking objects towards her, like straight up Magneto or straight up Jean Grey telekinesis. So she would have been a pro hero, but she would have retired to take care of Deku. Basically, her getting enough money to go in retirement and also support the family, as Deacon would have still been a pro hero, getting money for his, job. And basically, as he would still have time to be with Deku since he wouldn't be out of Japan, he would have had time to stay with Deku and raise him and be there in his life, unlike Deku's real dad. Unlike Deku's canon dad, because we never see him in the anime. He probably ain't in Inko's life, or he's dead. So, basically, what would happen is pretty much, well, Deacon would have shown Deku what he could do from a very young age. Him saying one day you can do the same thing. And basically, him hoping that Deku would turn out to be a dragonling like him, so he could live as long or near as long as him. And since quirks would have, modified human genes, it could be a good possibility that the dragon genes could have been more dominant and give Deku a longer lifespan. Long enough for Deku's father to eventually die before him, so he wouldn't have to bury his son, like other dragonlings had to get buried by their fathers. Basically breaking those dragons and then choosing to kill themselves. Basically what happened is pretty much, well, Deacon would have, raised Deku and basically would have been there all of his life. And eventually, when the day came when Deku was 5 years old, when he went to the quirk doctor said Deku had a quirk, but it was very weak and minor quirk, not enough to become a hero. Him having kind of the same abilities as Inko, but more on a bigger scale. As he wouldn't have full on telekinesis, but Deku would have had the ability to push and pull items towards him, but not move them around. Push and pull items towards him, but those items can only be as big as, let's say, as big as a baton or a knife or any type of handhold weapon. He could push it or pull it towards him. So he could push bullets away from him, knives, swords, but they said that, it's a very big limitation because he can only do it about 15 times a day. Basically, them saying that's enough to become a hero. Pretty much the doctor saying, I've seen heroes deal with a lot. And they have to use their quirks a lot in a fight against a real villain. So, basically, the quirk doctor said if you work hard enough, your son can become a very good hero. And all the other stuff. Basically, the limitations or the downside on this quirk on his body, since he can only use it 15 times a day, if he uses powers, or I guess more specifically, only pretty much, well, he can only use his quirk about, let's say, 15 times a day. Yeah, when he uses his power 15 times a day, or his quirk. If he uses it over 15 times, his bones would break. To put it simple, his bones will shatter into little dust. Now, his dragon abilities would kick in if this ever happened and would start to regenerate his bones and start to put him back together. But since they would be dust, it would take months or even years for his bones to be fully functional again. So he basically had to be sitting on a bed for years, basically having his bones refigurate itself. And basically that could be accelerated if Deku's father used his healing powers on him, but I'm pretty sure Deku would barely use his power in this what if, but use it enough so you guys wouldn't forget he would have a quirk. And basically, on the Deku's other abilities. Now, basically, after we see that Deku has a quirk in this universe, but it has a really big limitation on it, since he can only do do it 15 times a day, meaning that it counts as one if he uses his power to push an item away, and it counts as one if he uses the power to pull things towards him. So it counts every time. So pretty much, yeah. And even if it can be like one little thing, like a gummy bear, like what was it, a piece of food or a remote controller, literally anything like that counts as one. And if he miscounts or uses it more than 15 times, on his 15th one, he'll start to feel like literally he'll start to feel like fire is being set onto his arms. Like his whole body is being dipped into lava. Into lava. Basically, what would happen as Deku would basically go on with his life, growing up into his teenage years. As he would turn about 14, that's when his mutation or his dragon abilities would start to kick in. Him basically waking up one day feeling like he's on fire, or feeling like he's literally sweating his face off. As he would walk around the house, he would notice that his hair was white. Basically, in this canon, Deku's hair would be green the first couple years of his life, but now it just turned white. As he would look around his body, he would see that he was naturally white, and that every all of his hair was white now. If you get my drift, he looked at that place. But basically, he would basically start to freak out, basically saying, "What is this? My quirk already activated years ago." Basically, as he would look at his hair, he would start to examine it, seeing that it was completely white, including his eyebrows. Basically, this picture doesn't really, you know, show that very much since the eyebrows are gray. But basically, his eyebrows would have been white, but a little bit more of a darker white. As he would basically rush towards his dad, since his dad would be having an off day, or he would basically be off that day because it would be a Saturday. Basically, Deku would have told his dad what was happening, pointing to his hair. As his dad would be kind of confused, he would say it's finally happening. Him putting down his food, basically telling his son to meet him on top of the roof, as they would be living in a two-story house, since Deku's father and his mother would have a lot of money. Not rich by any means, but, you know, suburban-ish type family. Not suburban, but, a pretty, like, I guess, Mark or the I guess the Grayson family type money. Basically, as pretty much, well, Mark Deku. Sorry, I'm getting into Invincible now, but basically, as Deku would have met his father on the roof, he would basically ask his dad, "What does it have to do with my hair turning white?" Basically, him saying, "I remember those stories I told you about dragons, folklore, and how I'm thousands, millions of years old." Basically, him saying, "Yeah." Pretty much him saying that it's all true, son. I stopped telling you those stories when you turned 11, but I know now that you should know by now it's true. The things I can do, son, they can't just be explained by quirks. Quirks can do a lot of things, but they can't turn a normal person into a huge dragon-like being. Him saying, "I've never seen you turn into a dragon." His father saying, "Exactly, son." And basically, as he would jump off the roof, Deku would have said, "Dad, what are you doing?" Him flying down onto the ground with wings, as he would say, "Back up, son." Basically, him running into the forest a couple of yards away from their house, because their house would be on a hillside near Japan. Basically, he would transform into his dragon form, basically crouching so no one would really see him that much on the hill. Basically, him roaring. Pretty much Deku being completely shocked and eventually fainting. Basically, him just waking up a couple minutes later, 44 minutes later exactly, basically on the roof where his father would be waking him up, saying that, "Son, is all true." As could switch an hour later, as Deku's father would tell him everything about his life, white dragons, all the other dragon species, and how other dragons are most likely still alive, since they would be able to live amongst humans without any, well, exposure. Basically saying that when we're in human forms, our blood is very similar to quirk blood or plainly human blood if we suppress our powers enough. Basically, pretty much Deku would have said, "So, you're telling me that I'm basically him saying, yes, you're half dragon. Basically, him saying that you're part of one of the top three strongest dragon races. And basically, him saying, what are the other two? Him saying the fire dragons, the most, well, common and most, well, famous ones. And also the shower dragons. The shower dragons are the most powerful behind, well, us being able to go against them, but them literally having the only other dragon ability that can counteract our ability with such great force. And also, the second, big three are the ice dragons, speed dragons, more of the type, only building sized dragons that can run at the speed of light, and a couple other dragons that have other abilities. Basically, I'm saying, so you're telling me that dragons are real, mythology is real, pretty much everything else that in mythology, like medieval mythology, is real. So you're telling me all of it's real. Basically, Deku's father saying yes, it is real, son. Basically, him telling Deku that I should have told you earlier. I should have assumed that you would know, but I guess I eventually had to tell you this later on. As you grew up, you said this. I telling you these stories as you obviously thought it wasn't real. But I guess now you know the truth, son. Basically, Deku would have had a smile on his face saying, so I'm not just a quirk person. I'm literally, I'm a half dragon. So what happens next? As Deku's father would say, you call your school. For the next month, Deku would have been off of school. And the next month, after the month they would have off of school, that's when the 10-month art training would have happened. As Deku would be homeschooled for the rest of the, couple months he was off, basically until the end of the month. As doing the 10-month art training, they would go more into training. That month, Deku was just in the house being observed, basically making sure his dragon abilities weren't so, sporadic, since he never seen a quirk person have a child with a dragon before. And since pretty much, well, pretty much since quirk people, and earlier I said, humans couldn't have babies with dragons. That's not entirely true. It can happen, but the top three powerful dragons, they can't really have children with humans since their genes are so strong. They would basically destroy human or the eggs, basically not allowing the child to be born. Basically, what happened is pretty much since quirks would evolve humanity's genes just enough for the top three strongest dragon species to actually, have children with them, basically leading to Deku. And basically, as Deku would basically manifest his abilities during the 10-month art training, let's go over Deku's abilities. As he would have superhuman strength, durability, speed, and agility. Basically, him being as strong or having the base abilities as well, Superboy or Connor Kent's Superboy. Basically, him having super jump, him also having wings, but they would hurt his back like they were being, like they were ripping through his skin. And also, on the other contrary, he would also have superhuman durability, but not straight up Superman durability, but enough to take a few hits, kind of like Connor's. And basically, to put it simple, he has the same strength, speed, and durability as Connor Kent. Since Connor Kent Superman could take a lot of hits, but still get cut and bruised, just like everybody else. Not cut, but bruised. Basically, as and this would happen, we would see it pretty much, well, Deku would have been, well, pretty much erratic. Him loving his new abilities, him testing them out, him being very fast, about as fast as, let's say, a motorcycle on foot. Him also being fast enough to catch up with his dad in the air, being able to fly as fast as a jet, just like his dad. Him also having super senses as well, aka all super senses: smell, taste, hearing, sight, stuff like that. And basically, him also having extra ability, him also having the light manipulation and everything else, but him just not being as durable as his father and pretty much stuff like that. So the only downside, he doesn't have the durability as his father, and he only has the healing power. But it takes, since he is half dragon, he's about 1,000 years are added onto his already very long, or not very long, but long human life expectancy. Basically, 4,000 years being added on top of his human life expectancy because of his, well, dragon genes. And basically, pretty much, he would start to see white scales on the back of his body, kind of like in the joints of his body, like in the joints where his knees or where his elbows are. Basically, him trying to figure out what's going on as he would cover them up with bandages, like this picture. Basically, his father saying that it is somebody that can help with that, saying that some dragonlings, most of them have, well, mutations, but most of them don't. Basically, him saying at least you didn't grow a tail or pointy ears. Deku saying yeah, and basically as Deku would basically say, why should I cover them up, since they would just assume that would be a quirk. And basically, Deku showing up to school in showing up to pretty much, well, the entry exams after the 10-month art training. Basically, after the 10-month art training, as he would do that, Deku's father would just train him in hand-to-hand combat, fighting, and also swordsmanship, since Deku's father would be a master swordsman, a master marksman, and basically be skilled in literally, and I mean literally, every weapon that was around before the steampunk, pretty much, what was it? He would basically be a master, no, scratch, he'd basically be a master of every weapon or every weapon general, long range or close range, because he would be living for thousands of years, and plus the extra 20 years he lived in modern society, he would also learn about well, gunsmanship and everything else. Basically, him learning about, well, him knowing literally every martial arts, including karate, jitsu, and everything else. Him also knowing boxing, swordsmanship, archery, and also, well, sorcery as well. Him being able to make semi potions, but him not being good or necessarily bad at magic. And basically, magic still being a thing. Plus, witches, warlocks, um, orcs, and stuff like that, goblins, they're real as well in this universe. And I might change some of the characters in this anime into different mythical or pretty much, well, medieval time creatures or stories. Basically, yeah. So basically, pretty much what happened is Deku would have kind of a, you know, fun time over the months of him figuring out his abilities. Not years, but it's semi there. 2 more months would be a year. But basically, pretty much what happened. Basically, what happened is, as pretty much Deku's father would have trained Deku a lot more vigorously, and Deku being a master at archery, gunsmanship, swordsmanship, and that would be basically it. Him also being able to box and knowing karate, and that would be basically all of Deku's fighting techniques and skill. And basically, him pretty much still being trained by his father on the sidelines. But since UA would have started up, and since the entry exam would have happened, Deku's father would have been a lot more preoccupied with work, since the later villains would have been striking under the radar as soon as UA started to, well, open up. Basically, us seeing that Deku's father would have been barely around, but Deku wouldn't really see anything to it, since Deku's father would have been there for a long time in his life. And basically, as Deku would go to UA for the entry exam, he would bump into Momoya Rozu instead of Ochaku. Momo being on her way to the internship, not internship, but to the pretty much, well, the pretty much part where she was put into, pretty much because she was, well, asked, or I guess she was strong enough to be considered into UA without even going to the entry exams. As pretty much we see that Deku would have bumped into her, basically him talking to her, and her seeing that his white hair was kind of unique. Basically her talking to her. Basically as him and her would have been starting to talk, I kind of messed up with that. Basically as Deku and Momo start to talk. Basically, Deku eventually starts to flirt with her a little bit, since he would have a lot more confidence. Since in this canon, he wouldn't be bullied in school, and Bakugo wouldn't be friends with Deku, since he would have thought that Deku would have been a rival to him. Basically, in this canon, since Deku's probably around and they would live in more of a luxury type area, not luxury, they wouldn't be rich or anything. They would just be, you know, they would be able to afford nice things, to be honest. A bit of simple. And basically, what would happen is pretty much Deku would have started to flirt with Momo a little bit. Momo picking up on this, and her basically flirting back a little bit. As she would say, "I gotta go." Basically saying, I hope you get into UA." Basically, here waving Deku goodbye. As Deku would wave back, he would basically start to run to the entry exam, as he would basically be there in the back, basically listening to the instructions of the 0 pointers, the 1 pointers, and everything else. As he would eventually be told to go, saying there's no real countdowns in a real battle, basically him sprinting off. Deku using his wings off the bat, him yelling out in pain, but being able to brush it under his breath, basically being able to just grunt when his wings pop out of his back, as they would rip through his jumpsuit. Since his jumpsuit in this canon would have been a white jumpsuit instead of a green jumpsuit with black lines. And basically, as he would fly off, he would start to use his light manipulation, basically shooting laser beams towards the 1 pointers, taking them out pretty quickly, and 2 pointers and 3 pointers, basically blasting them left and right. As he would start to fly down, he would grab some of them, chucking them into trees, or chucking them not into trees, but chucking them into buildings and into cars, since they would have fake cars on the sidelines of the fake city. Basically, as he would be flying around, he would get swallowed out the sky by the 0 pointer out of nowhere, as Deku would fall into a nearby building, inside of the building onto a pillar. As he would get up, he would fly out of the building and be basically circling over the 0 pointer. As he would put his wings inside of his body, Deku basically pretty much pushing him back into his back. As he would yell out in pain, his back would have started to heal. Basically, tattoos being on the back of his, you know, was it shoulders, basically, since they would hurt him, but they wouldn't hurt his father, since he would be half dragon. But basically, as he would land on top of the 0 pointer's shoulders, as he would punch the 0 pointer's head so hard, it would basically shatter. Basically, Deku's arm almost breaking, since he would release a lot of strength. Plus, he would also use strength in his legs to push his body forward into 0 pointer's head, basically with his fist. Him torpedoing right through the 0 pointer's head, shattering it into a couple pieces. Basically, 0 pointer falling down to the ground, as Deku would rip his wings back out of his, body, basically flying down and grabbing Ochaku from the rubble. As he would land Ochaku down onto the floor, he would basically say, "Are you okay?" Her saying, "Yeah, I'm okay." And this can her just being there, she wouldn't be trapped under any rubble. Just Deku would be angry that 0 pointer hit him. So basically, as pretty much Deku would have told her, to be safe, and him basically saying, "I hope you do good." Basically, him flying off and him wanting to get more 0 pointers, or more, I guess, 1 pointers and 2 pointers. The bell would have rang, or the pretty much alarm or sign would have gone off. Then being told, or then being told to head back home and wait for the test results. As Deku would go back home, he would meet up with his mom cooking dinner, and him going into his room and falling asleep right when he hits the door, or right when he hits the bed. And basically him waking up the next morning and him getting ready for pretty much, well, UA. Since that morning he would get no from UA. Pretty much the next day will be a Monday, since they would have, in this canon, they would have the entry exam on a Saturday. Basically, Deku getting ready and him going to UA on this Monday or the next day. As he would basically get ready, He would walk into class one day, basically seeing all these other students, and him recognizing Momo as he would walk over to her and he would start to talk to her. Basically, then being interrupted by Azawa as Azawa would tell them to shut up and then get ready. And basically, them getting told to make themselves down, get themselves ready, go to the gym, and go to the locker rooms, get ready, and meet him outside. As Deku would get ready, he would have taken off his shirt, basically showing scars and some scarring on his back, then being covered up by white wing tattoos. Basically, pretty much Kirishima saying that's so manly, bro. Basically, Deku saying, "What you mean by that? What you mean by that?" Pretty much, Kirishima saying, "I mean you're manly, bro. That's really cool. You know the scars, the jackness you got. Like it looks so cool." Basically, him saying, "Uh huh. That's really what you meant." Okay. Basically, him slightly just tiptoeing away from Kirishima, feeling kind of uncomfortable, as he would his um put on his sports clothes or their gym outfits, them getting outside, and basically them being told that they're going to do quirk assessments. Deku being told Deku being told to throw the ball first, him walking over there, grabbing the ball, and chucking it as hard as he possibly can. Him using his wings to pretty much use some wind pressure to pretty much push the ball farther. It hitting or directly hitting right in the center of the sun. As basically Deku would have said, "Did I do good?" Azawa being kind of surprised, him saying, "You did good, kid." Basically, him calling a couple others to do the rest. Basically, when we get to the sand jump, Deku uses wings to pretty much just jump himself forward. Actually, scratch that. Deku wouldn't use his wings since they would hurt him. So he would just jump over it since he would have super jumps, since he would have super strength throughout all of his body. For the race, Deku would have won about second place since he would be pretty fast. And for pretty much the crypto strength, Deku would have gotten first place since he would have pretty good strength. Now, basically, after that, overall, Deku would get first place. And basically, Bakugo would have recognized Deku after he would have glossed over the white hair and the white eyes. Basically, him telling Deku, "Why are you here?" Basically, him getting kind of angry at Deku and throwing an explosion at him, thinking that he's trying to steal his thunder. But basically, what happened, Azao would have stepped in, but before Azao could, say anything, Deku would have taken this opportunity to just sucker punch Bakugo as he was immobilized by Azawa. Azawa being kind of shocked, but telling both of them to cut it out. Him saying, "I don't want to do the paperwork, so you guys just calm down and let this little squabble brush over night, okay? Because I don't want to send you into suspicion. Because I don't want to write no notes or anything like that. Because I'm already tired. I want this day to be over." So basically, him telling them both, calm down, and basically waking up Bakugo and telling them to go home and saying if you could fight when you're off school property, you can fight when you're off school property, okay? Now get out. Basically, them running off. As the rest of the students would have left with their syllabus, as Deku would also be handed his syllabus very roughly because Zao wouldn't really appreciate Deku getting in a fight. And basically, what happened after that, Deku would have started to go back home. Basically, him going into an alleyway and him pushing his wings out of his back, him yelling out, him flying to his house. As he would be flying to his house, he would basically fly down and pretty much him coming across a fast food joint. He would basically fly down there, him grabbing some food. As this would happen, he would basically look at some food, uh, grab some mochi, and basically just be on his way back home. As he would be followed. As Deku would notice he was being followed doing his super senses, him hearing somebody, breathe right, like heavily about a couple feet away from him using his hearing to basically see that person's heartbeat go way up. Basically, him looking around, and him looking around using his slight super agility to literally turn himself very fast using his super senses, aka his super, reaction time to basically see the person's face, seeing that somebody was looking directly at him, following him. As he would start to sprint full speed, the person would have been able to keep up with Deku. Him being incredibly shocked on who this person is. A speed quirk, maybe, a flight quirk, maybe, or maybe he's on some sort of bike or something. But I'm running as fast as a motorcycle right now, so I'm pretty sure he's not going to be able to catch up with me. Deku looking back, seeing it was this greenish, monstrous type creature with teeth and basically some sort of claws. Him basically running faster and faster. As it wouldn't be a greenish creature, as the creature would have started to pop out wings. Deku seeing clearly him running backwards, him not really noticing what's behind him seeing scales on it, his hands covered in blood, and it having ripped up pants on it, and it having a glowing demonic type blade in his hands. It's staring at Deku with the intent of murdering him. As Deku would be scared for his life, he would start to run as fast as he could, him eventually popping out his wings, him, grunting, and him flying as fast as he could. As pretty much the black dragon creature would start to fly right after him. As he would start to see, the black dragon creature was the same description as his father would give him of how the humanoid version or the humanoid form of shadow dragons would look like. More of a blackish humanoid dragon hybrid. As all dragons could transform into dragon-like hybrids with the same strength and more of a, animalistic thought, or more of a, let's say, brutal in tendency. Basically, what happened is all dragons would transform into a, monstrous type, half dragon, half human hybrid creature. But it would just make their, attributes of, them being a dragon, an animal, more vigorous. Them being able to think clearly, but them having more of an anger strike. Them being more prone to killing people even though they don't want to. And basically, what happened is the Black Dragon would have been following Deku as fast as possible, and eventually cutting into Deku, basically stabbing through his thigh, as he would throw the demonic blade towards Deku like a shuriken. As Deku would fall into the ground, he would fall into a pool of water, a pool behind a pool behind the house of Denki. Basically, Denki would have been looking because he would have been in the pool. Him basically getting out of the pool as fast as possible. Him seeing Deku, seeing him being thrown against his backyard, and pretty much, the shadow creature, the shadow dragon about to kill Deku, pulling out the blade from Deku's leg. Basically, the blade pretty much glowing more red. It basically yelling out Deku's name in a more ominous tone. It chanting some sort of voodoo stuff. And basically, the dragon creature murmuring out the words that I'm going to kill every one of you. Basically, him charging the blade right in the Deku's chest. As Denki would hit the shadow creature or the, shadow dragon, basically hitting it with so much electricity that it would knock out Denki as well, but would have sent the dragon flying. Basically, the dragon having a huge scorch mark on his chest. Basically, it flying off, it limping a little bit. As pretty much Denki would have pretty much walked over to Denki. Denki basically mainly just knocking himself out a little bit. Basically, him still being, conscious, him telling Deku all the, basically him passing out. As he would call 911, he would basically be picked up and he would tell them what happened as he would be, injured, him being pulled to the hospital. As Deku's father would show up soon after the next day, basically him being super worried about his son. Pretty much Inko would have told him about what happened, and it was a huge gash in his thigh. Well, luckily, for some reason, they thought he had some sort of killing quirk, since Inko would have known about, Asashi being a dragon, as he would tell her this on their wedding night. Basically, as pretty much Asashi would have told Deku that, a secret that he didn't tell him because he thought it was long over, but Deku was told Long ago, years ago, during years before the medieval period even started, the Dragon and White Dragon War, the Shadow War, the White War was a huge turning point in dragonkind. The two species of the top three had a feud with each other because one of their species intercorrelated with a shadow dragon. Basically, the shadow dragon being a minor, only a couple years old, still only as big as a building. Basically, it being assaulted by a very older white dragon. Basically, the war being spread out against all of us. Basically, us being pretty much fought against. After that situation was done with, years later, a shadow dragon murdered a whole pack, or not pack, but a whole family of white dragons. It started another second war, it becoming more gruesome and bloodier. Shadow dragons being nearly almost extinct because of it, including white dragons as well. Fire dragons would have stayed out of it, them wanting no business with this war. But the elder shadow dragon, one of the strongest, was tasked on assassinating the king or the master of the shadow dragons. As a shadow dragon species would have been almost extinct, only about 100 of them being left. As they would go into hiding, then repopulating slowly over the years. Basically, the white dragons repopulating as well slowly over the years, them trying to build up their species more and more. Over the years, it's been multiple little breakouts, battles, wars, miniature wars, not real wars, broken out over the years, leading to villages, kingdoms, and continents being blown off the face of the earth. Basically, him saying it was five more continents on earth, but they were all destroyed and burned down and flooded after a huge war against white dragons and shadow dragons. Basically, what would happen is pretty much Deku would have said, "Sir, tell me it's a war against us and them over a petty argument." The first one I can understand, but why would a shadow dragon just kill a bunch of white dragons? Him saying that it was for the first war. That dragon was still feeling stingy, and we already took the powers of the dragon that started the war, the white dragon. Him Deku saying you could take the powers of a dragon. Him saying it's a very complicated ritual that can only be done by three elder white dragons, dragons that have been around for thousands of hundreds of years. I'm almost an elder dragon myself, but it can only take three with the same conscious mind and the same goal to take away that person's power permanently. As that dragon was exiled, it eventually found its way to a dark, cavernous pit of despair and anger. It being turned into immortal after his powers were taken away, as the dragon would have veiled itself with dark magic, becoming a wizard of sorts, becoming a witch, becoming a demon, selling its soul to the devil to become even more powerful, becoming so enveloped in darkness, more terrifying than a black or white dragon or any dragon of any sorts, basically the becoming Earth's devil. Basically, as Deku's father would be done with the story after in this camera room or in this hospital room, they wouldn't have cameras or speakers for some reason. But luckily, basically, Deku's father would have told Deku that that's the war. It's still going on today under the radars. You remember that incident in America? A building was collapsed, and it seemed like it was decaying rock, and also lights or laser beams scorched on the side of the building. That was a war or a battle against 16 black shadow dragons and white dragons fighting to the death, and most of them all died. Only two of them survived, and they bowed it out 2 miles away from that area in a desert area, or in pretty much a more grassy plain, more of a broken down warehouse, them destroying that warehouse as well, them killing each other at the same time. Basically, him saying shadow dragons that can control the shadows. They can also decay items using blast or touch. And basically, pretty much as you would be told, that the white dragons and shadow dragons have been fighting for millennia, and that it can only be stopped if the other takes out the other species permanently. Basically, pretty much from a young age, shadow dragons are trained to hate white dragons and kill them no matter what. But pretty much saying that you never know who can be a white dragon, who can be a shadow dragon. Shadow dragons over the years have evolved since shape-shifting quirks are a thing. Dragonlings that are children of black dragons are mainly born with 0 to none birth mutations. Basically, Deku saying, so you're telling me it can literally be anyone from my school, anyone I see, anybody I know on the streets could be a shadow dragon? Deku's father would say yes, but you'll be staying here for a few days. Since your super healing, since you're a dragon, is kicking in, you'll be out here in a couple days, or no, not even a couple days. You'll be out here in a day. So you're going to school tomorrow. Basically, Deku saying, so I got stabbed in the leg, almost killed, and you just told me a whole literal story on a huge war that's been going around, that is still going around, and you want me to just go back to school? Him saying, Deku's followers told him that just stay calm and don't do anything stupid. Basically, him, just staying there for the night. The next night, Deku would have been discharged from the hospital. Now I'm gonna leave it off here, guys. I guess this video was kind of slow, but I'm gonna start adding a little bit more of music, not copyright music, uncopyrighted music, a little bit more music into my videos. I don't know if my future editing self is gonna add, music, but basically, guys, I hope you guys enjoy the video. Hope you guys like and subscribe, and as always, guys, have a blessed day. After this video, I'm gonna be uploading 2 new other what ifs. What if Deku was the Deep, and also what if Bell was a mutant? That's a what if I'm really excited for. But I hope you guys enjoy the video. Hope you guys like and subscribe. And as always, guys, stay blessed.